Tell me, what is demography? What does it have to do with? Uzo? Good. Study of populations, things that affect populations. Can someone tell me something that we've talked about in class that has a very positive impact on populations? Somebody said it, food. Okay, more food, more people. Okay. How about something we've also talked about that has a negative impact on populations? Good. Disease. You got it. Okay. All right. So farming and domestication of animals help increase our population, but ironically, domestication of animals also brought us diseases. A lot of the diseases that we have today started with animals. It's not a coincidence we call it chicken pox, for example. Now, smallpox up there. Smallpox is one of the biggest killers of humans. Okay, probably may be the biggest killer of humans in history, right there. And we've eradicated smallpox. We eradicated smallpox back in the 20th century, like around the 1970s, 1980s was the last case of smallpox. But it does still exist. Where? Anybody know? No, we have it. It's in labs. Like the United States has it. Russia has it. Other places have it too. Supposedly, just in case that they need to make a vaccine. Supposedly, and we know nothing ever escapes labs, right? Okay. So perfectly safe. Okay. Uh, Here's the bad news for you. Okay. Um, I'm vaccinated against smallpox. They stopped vaccinating though in the 1970s or 1980s, which means you're not. So if smallpox ever does break out again, you guys are just a big buffet table. Okay. All right. So there you go. Okay. I don't know. I don't think I want to find out. I don't think I'm not gonna volunteer to have myself tested. So okay. All right. Moving on here. Social and gender structures, and I'll have this on canvas in case you get behind. Okay. So remember, this is the S part of SPICE. This is part something that a lot of students have trouble with. But your status, really up until the Industrial Revolution, was based upon how much land you had. The more land you had, the more power or more status you had. Kings and emperors were often considered to be divine or somehow or another, connected to the gods. They promoted that idea, made it easier for them to rule. If people believed that they were gods, you don't want to tick off the gods. And then you've got something referred to as the "who's your daddy" phenomenon. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Who's your daddy? Okay. There's a word up there that is underlined that you need to learn. Okay, ladies, pay attention. Patrilineal. Okay, we've talked about that word patri before, like as in patriarchy. What does patri have to do with? Fathers, males. Good, good. Okay, patriarchy is ruled by men. Okay, now patrilineal. You can kind of see the word line right there. Okay, or you may have heard of the word lineage before. Okay, so patrilineal means that people are tracing their heritage through their father, okay? Through their father's line. Okay? So and our society today, right here, is patrilineal because most people's last names are determined by who? Their father. Most people have last names are taken from their father. But there are a few societies in this world where people trace their heritage through their mother, and that what would that be called? Matrilineal, very good. Okay, and you'll bump into them this year. Okay, usually they're like in sub-Saharan Africa. Uh, but one thing to keep in mind as you jot this down, even in societies that were matrilineal, men still ruled. Okay, don't think, oh, it's matrilineal, it's a matriarchy. No, it wasn't. Okay, it wasn't. Okay, uh, now the writers of the AP exam, one of the things they want you to appreciate is how women have been restricted, okay, or treated by men over time, okay, and so you have to be aware of some of the different restrictions men have placed upon women. And here's your first one right here, okay, veiling, okay? And veiling was in the Middle East prior to Islam, okay. Veiling was used in Mesopotamia. Okay, it was, and actually, like some of the Eastern Greek Isles, it was practiced there too. Okay? That was the influence that from Mesopotamia over there. Okay, men wanted to make sure that their women were their women and not somebody else's, because it was important when it came to passing down their property. They wanted to make sure that they passed down their land to their son and not to that guy who might have visited while daddy was out of town, if you understand what I'm saying. Okay. And so men were very, very controlling. And by the way, when we get to China, we're going to learn about foot binding. That's another way men control women. Okay. All right, we'll talk all about that. It restricts their movement. Okay. uh, Now notice down here, prostitutes, okay, forbidden to be veiled. So people understood she's not veiled. We know she's available right there, okay. But this is before Islam. Islam got started on the Arabian Peninsula, which was a nomadic culture. Veiling doesn't really lend itself to people who are constantly on the move, okay. But when Islam spread northward into Mesopotamia, which was a more urbanized, sedentary civilization, that's when Islam adopted veiling. Yes. Yes, exactly. So other men can't see. Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and move on. Cultural and intellectual expressions. Uh, this was true back then. Even you can even argue it's true today to an extent. Okay. Men with power like to show it off. Okay. And these kings back then, they showed off their power by building huge projects. So, for example, the pharaohs, what did they famously build? And if you've ever studied anything about the pharaohs, each pharaoh wanted his pyramid to be bigger than the last guy's. Okay, didn't always work out, but they tried. Okay, now in Mesopotamia, ziggurats. Okay, which I'll show you a picture of here in just a minute. But they were kind of we believe they were used primarily as temples. Okay, for their gods. Pyramids are not temples though. Pyramids are just a big tomb for the pharaoh, like a burial place. It wasn't where you went and practiced your religion. Yes.
Wait, is that why those like 7 world wonders exist or something like?
Yeah, the pyramids are part of those. Yes. Okay. Writing. We talked a little bit about this yesterday. Writing becomes necessary because of the need to keep records. That's why it's invented. It wasn't invented because people wanted to tell stories or record songs or poetry or recipes. It was invented, we believe, because there was a need to keep track of who's paid and who hasn't paid, who owes, and then also property, who owns what property. Now, you need to be aware of the different types of writing from different regions. So in Mesopotamia, they used cuneiform. I'm going to show you what that looked like here in just a minute. Yep. In Egypt, you've learned since you were probably in elementary school, they used hieroglyphics. Now, by the way, when we get to the Mayans, actually, you already read a little bit about the Mayans in chapter 1. But the Mayans, they also used hieroglyphics. But I want to make sure you're clear. The Mayans were not, and the Egyptians were not using the same hieroglyphics. Hieroglyphics are just picture writing. So a Mayan could not read Egyptian hieroglyphics and vice versa. Okay, it's different. Now, over in China, okay, all those different Chinese characters are referred to as ideographs. And then the actual characters that you're using right now and that you see up here on the screen, they were invented by the Phoenicians, or at least the initial alphabet was invented by the Phoenicians. It was developed over time. And in a way, you guys have known about this probably since elementary school, in a way. What grade were you in when they taught you how to use a dictionary? Third grade? Third grade? Okay. Oh, she says, what'd you say? Fourth grade. Okay. You were in the advanced class. Okay. All right. Now, all right. So third or fourth grade. Well, when they taught you how to use a dictionary, You look up the word, and then you can see the definition. But what is that that's in between the word and the definition in parentheses? The what? The pronunciation. But what's it called? What's it called? Oh, as in the Phoenicians. That's where that word phonetic derives from. Good. Okay. There you go. Okay. Here's a really hard question for you. How many characters are in our alphabet? Oh, okay, good. You passed that one. Okay, good. Okay. All right. So now, can you tell me what is the advantage of our alphabet versus Chinese writing? It's a much smaller character set. Okay. Now I'm just curious. I don't know. I know it's in the thousands, but is there a set number? There's not. Okay. Okay. Okay, but Chinese writing, we can agree, has many characters, right? Takes a lot of memorization. Okay, so that's an advantage of ours over Chinese writing. We'll get to that later on. Okay, now time to stop talking, guys. Up here, okay, this is some of the earliest Chinese writing that we have. Do y'all know what this is? The tortoise shell, okay, or turtle shell, okay, tortoise, turtle, okay. And some of the earliest writing that we have from the Chinese are on bones, okay, and they would carve these characters onto bones, put them in fire, okay, and then they believed that as the bone heated up, it would crack. But they believed that where the cracks, like if the crack went through this character but not that character, that was the gods telling us something, okay. And so these were called oracle bones. And so they believed that they could figure out what the gods wanted us to do by reading how the cracks, appeared in across the characters. Yes.
How do we know to like speak the words?
How do we know to speak the words?
Well, because we figured out how to.
Let's talk about that later on because we're already running behind. Okay. All right. Nothing to write here. I just want to show you this, guys. Okay. This is a ziggurat. Okay. It still exists in this is in Iraq. Okay. During the Gulf War, we actually had to guard these things, or this one here. I think it's the only one that we actually is still surviving. We had to guard this because we were concerned that Saddam Hussein might blow it up and try to blame us for it. So, but you can. This is what we believed it originally looked like right here. You can still see the side staircases right here, the main staircase right here. But the top areas here have crumbled since then. Notice that it's made out of brick too. It's not made out of stone like the pyramids. They didn't have that much stone in Mesopotamia at that time. Now, here's cuneiform, okay, right here. And as she mentioned a while ago, when you see cuneiform, you can see all these little triangles in it. And this is clay, okay? So they would press what you would think of as like kind of like a cookie cutter or something like that. They would press that into wet clay. Can you imagine, Okay, guys, get out your wet clay. It's time to take your notes, okay? And then they must have had some pretty beefy scribes back then, carrying all these heavy clay tablets around. Okay, this right here is actually a map. This is here. You can see all the different little cuneiform up here, and that's translated because we can read cuneiform. And so you can see there's a canal right here. There's a irrigation ditches in here, side canals, fields. Okay, and that's all from this right here. Okay. All right, nothing. You don't need to write this down either. But this is the writing from the end of civilization. These we refer to these things as seals. We think we can't be sure, but we believe that these are basically like logos, like for products or maybe the maker. And now again, we can't read these things, but look here. This is what you probably ought to remember though. Not only have we found these things in the Indus Valley, okay, in Pakistan, but we've also found them in China and Mesopotamia. So what does that tell us? Trade, good, trade. There was connection between those areas. All right, time to write again. So this is going to be the P on spice right here. This is the political stuff. Okay, your earliest governments were city-states. I've given you a couple of examples up there, like Babylon. Now, a city-state is where you have a singular city, like Houston. But then the state part is all the land around the city that supports the city. So if you were to think of as Houston as being a city state today, well then the state part would be Katy, Tomball, Kingwood, the Woodlands. Think about all the people who live outside of Houston. Every morning they get there on the interstate and they drive into Houston to work, and in the evening they come out. Okay. Back then, it would have been farmers who lived out there in the countryside farming. Then they would take their products into the city to be sold. You can see up here, most people live out there on the farm. Now, what happens is some of these kings of city states, a few of them become successful conquerors, and they begin collecting city states, multiple city states, and that makes an empire. And notice there's a term up here that you're going to have to learn. It's going to be with you all year long. Okay, tribute empires. A tribute empire is an empire that you pay money to, or not just money. You pay something of value to. Could be clothing, could be food, it could be people. Okay, or it could be gold. But you pay something of value to them so they don't beat you down. It's like paying the lunchroom bully your milk money or your lunch money. Taxes are paid by farmers. You also had some famous laws created during this time period. I'm sure all of you have heard an eye for an eye and not a leg for a leg, a tooth for a tooth. Good. Okay. All right. But that goes back to Hammurabi's code. Okay. It sounds a bit ruthless, but it sounds also very fair. But really, it wasn't, because it kind of depended on whose eye you put out. If you were a noble and you put out the eye of a slave, I promise you, your eye would not be put out. It depended on who it was. Governments were there for protection. That's why they were created. These governments will field large armies to protect the people. They will also require the people to build high walls to protect them from being attacked, from invasion. Archaeologists, when they discover the ruins of cities, when there are walls around the city, they know what was going on in the area, what was happening. War, good. The only reason why you build a high, thick wall is for protection. And, all right, we'll pick up here tomorrow, guys. We're nearly done. Okay, we just have a little bit left to do, and we'll be finished. I'm going to put them on canvas. Yeah. I've got to grade those short answers first.